Hello, Degrassi readers, and welcome back to Bruce Mackey's Library. As always, I am your host slash kinda librarian in training. I'm Mix Lucy, and this is our Halloween special. Woo! That was fun, right? Today we are not here to actually talk about a published Degrassi book. We're kind of here because there are some twists and turns that I think Degrassi books could have taken that they decided not to. And I'm kind of here to tell you that I think Degrassi could have published a Halloween joke book, and they decided not to. Or maybe they just never came up with the idea. Really, I'm not sure. So, yes, no actual Degrassi book in this episode, but a fun Phineas and Ferb Halloween joke book, as well as a little project that I worked on that is kind of like fan fiction. I basically, with help from my dear friend Degrassi Kid / Jocelyn, wrote a Degrassi Halloween book with some jokes sprinkled throughout. The jokes are the help of Jocelyn, aka Degrassi Kid. They're a really good punny person if you've never had the chance to make puns with them and have jokes with them. I think they're kind of like fucking hilarious, to be honest. And I love them. They're awesome. And they were very helpful. So, the short backstory of this is I don't remember when, but one day I was thrift shopping at the Child Abuse Prevention Association thrift store, also known as Kappa, where they have the amazing 10-cent books that I absolutely love. All of the children's books are 10 cents. And I found a Phineas and Ferb book. And I enjoyed Phineas and Ferb a lot when I was younger. So I found this 10-cent book and I wanted to use it for this podcast, but didn't know exactly how or when or why. In my first episode about a Kids of Degrassi Street book, I did do a little comparison between Lisa Makes the Headlines and this iCarly book that I found at the same thrift store. So when I picked this one up, I kind of thought I would end up doing the same thing, hoping that I would find a good Degrassi Halloween book to kind of compare it to and have a fun time. Turns out there are no Degrassi Halloween books, and it's Halloween time, and I'm really stressed out right now as a queer person in a red state during the time of an American election. A very stressful one for me. So, yeah, I thought, why not de-stress and make my own Degrassi Halloween content and podcast about it. So, yeah, I kind of made my own and used this Phineas and Ferb book as kind of like a template. So I'm going to discuss it for a little bit so you can have the idea of what I am kind of going off of and saying, I think Degrassi could do this. I honestly feel like Degrassi could use more books. I would love new Degrassi books, and I feel like the fans could write really good Degrassi books. So that's kind of what this episode is. If you don't want to listen any further, I completely understand. And my only message to you is please have a happy Halloween if you choose to celebrate Halloween. And also, if you can vote, please vote. Thank you. Anyway, if you're sticking around, the book we are discussing is Phineas and Ferb's Spooktacular joke book. Hey there, editing me here. I'm here with some trigger warnings. Yeah, trigger warning for racism / kind of a joke about a person from India being an alien, as well as a weird joke that seems like it's supposed to be sexual about extraterrestrials. There's also a section where they glance right over bullying to poorly transition into jokes. All of these triggers are for the where I review the Phineas and Ferb joke book. It was published on July 31st, 2012, and the description, according to Google Books, is, "What did the ghost say to Phineas and Ferb? I know what we're going to boo today. Sit around the campfire with Phineas, Ferb, and the rest of the gang as they tell super scary jokes and stories. This is the third joke book, and it's illustrated with black and white original art and screen grabs throughout." So I didn't know Phineas and Ferb had any joke books at all before I picked this one up. The first Phineas and Ferb joke book is Laughapalooza, and it was published on January 19th, 2010. The second one is Agent P's Top Secret Joke Book, and it was published on May 3rd, 2011. The author of this book is Scott Peterson. He was born on October 31st, Halloween, of 1965, so kind of perfect for him to publish the Halloween joke book. And he is a story editor, writer, and author. He is the producer for The Last Kids on Earth. That is a series of books about kids during a zombie apocalypse, and I really love that. I have read a decent amount of it. So yeah, he was the story editor starting with the episode The Lake Nose Monster, and he started writing for Phineas and Ferb for the episode Swiss Family Phineas. He's written 55 episodes of Phineas and Ferb, as well as additional material for Phineas and Ferb the movie Across the Second Dimension, and he's written 16 Phineas and Ferb books. That is all according to Phineas and Ferb fandom wiki. So, there you go. I'm kind of going to give you the premise of this book, because I'm not going to read the whole thing. I will read like a couple of jokes here and there, but they seem to be mostly computer generated, don't really reference Phineas and Ferb kind of jokes. So the premise of this book is, it was a dark and spooky night in Phineas and Ferb's backyard, so they decided to have a campfire with Buford, Baljeet, and Isabella, while Candace is supposed to be babysitting them. To add a bit more fun to the night, they started telling stories and jokes. It starts with a story about a mad scientist who makes a robot that is supposed to make their bed for them, but the robot refuses to do it. That leads them to then tell two kind of cute jokes about mad scientists. Then they tell some jokes about aliens. I don't really remember how they got to the alien jokes, but it was a tad awkward because Baljeet is the one who tells the alien jokes when he is obviously supposed to be an Indian, as in from India. So that kind of felt a bit, I don't know, undertones there, man. Anyway, then Buford, as I don't know how to pronounce it, I don't remember, I haven't watched it forever, tells 4 skeleton slash cemetery jokes, and then we finally get another story from Isabella this time. She tells a ghost story and then follows it up with 4 jokes about ghosts. Then Baljeet thinks he hears a loud noise, and he sees a shadow that he thinks is Bigfoot. So they tell 2 jokes about Bigfoot. Then Buford scares Baljeet with a bottle of ketchup into thinking it's like some kind of blood. So they tell 4 jokes about zombies. Then Ferb tells his story that's like supposed to be a scary story. But if you haven't seen Phineas and Ferb, Ferb is such a quiet kid. This did make me laugh a lot. I loved this. His scary story is literally just kids, graveyard, monster, in the bushes, jumps out. Boo! That's it. That makes Buford think about Frankenstein for some reason. And of course, Baljeet, who's kind of like a nerd, I do love Baljeet, goes to correct him and says, you know, Frankenstein is the doctor, Frankenstein's monster is the monster. And Buford has to tell him, well, yes, I'm scared of doctors. Then they make sure to include jokes about the doctor as well as the monster, with 4 jokes in total about the subject of Frankenstein and his monster. Candace isn't impressed with any of these, so in case you forgot she was here, as I had, she decides to tell you a story about a haunted house. Then Isabella says she has some jokes about haunted houses, of course, and proceeds to tell you 4 of them. And then for some odd reason, the last haunted house joke is about how sea monsters and haunted houses actually have nothing in common. They're so gravely different. Yeah, I made that pun. That wasn't in the book. I'm punny. They're so gravely different. Just so you can poorly transition into jokes about sea monsters. Out of nowhere. They proceed to tell 3 of them. And then Baljeet says, you know what I really find scary? Werewolves. Let me tell you some werewolf jokes. And then they proceed to tell 3. And then we finally get another fun story about a bully trying to kill a talking spider that grows when it's angry. So they can transition into telling jokes about spiders. Hey there, it's editing me. I seem to be mistaken. It actually seems to be a story about how a spider is also a bully and then becomes friends with a bully. I may have just actually blocked out the story because I didn't like it. Yeah, the bully and the spider team up and bully people together, and that is scary. But yeah, back to recording me because it's not fully relevant anyway. And other creepy crawlies. Those are their exact words. They tell 3 of those, and then Perry comes into the yard. Perry is a platypus, a pet platypus, whom is also a secret agent. I love Perry. And Phineas says that Perry came to hear jokes about other kinds of monsters. No specification there, they just say other kinds of monsters. So they proceed to tell 4 jokes about random kinds of monsters. Then Baljeet tells a vampire story, and Phineas says one time Candace thought she was a vampire. So Candace recaps a bit by saying, well, you shrank yourself down to a microscopic size, you own a milkshake bar on an asteroid, and you think it's weird that I once thought I was a vampire? Phineas agrees, then tells 4 vampire jokes. After that, we're on the last page, and it just wraps up by saying Phineas is tired, Candace is mad about how they're just wrapping up and everything was so boring. Then Jeremy Johnson's little sister comes out and scares her because Candace is just scared of this little girl. And so Candace runs inside, and then the book is over. That's it. I did enjoy it still. I'll read a few of the jokes just so you can kind of get how random they are. So, one of the mad scientist jokes says, what did the mad scientist get when he crossed a ghost with Baljeet's bully friend? Buford. That's like the most direct Phineas and Ferb referenced joke in there. The other mad scientist joke is literally just, what did the mad doctor say to the patient, the invisible man? I don't see anything wrong with you. That's literally not even a mad scientist joke unless you're saying doctors are scientists. And you could have gotten that off the internet. You probably did. But okay. And then there is kind of a sexual reference that I don't think kids would get here, where it says, I've got some jokes about extraterrestrials, Baljeet offered. We've got enough terrestrials as it is, Buford snapped. We don't need any extras. Then he paused. What's a terrestrial? Yeah, that seems like he's making a joke about Balls. Yeah. And then Baljeet explains that extraterrestrials are visitors from outer space. And Buford says, "Oh, aliens. Why didn't you say so?" And the whole time, Buford is saying, "Oh, aliens." He's a white guy staring at an Indian from India, because the other kind of Indians are Native Americans. Therefore, yeah. I just, okay. One of these jokes is about an alien that's named Meep who uses a vacuum cleaner to clean the space between planets. Yeah. The one of the jokes about a skeleton is, what is a skeleton's favorite food? Spare ribs. So yeah, a lot of these just seem to be jokes they found on the internet. And yeah, I thought like, oh yeah, Degrassi could do this. Degrassi could do this better. There's even a Canada reference here. What's Bigfoot's favorite Canadian province? Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan? Saskatchawan. Saskatchewan. I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce this, but yeah. Hey there, editing me here. Please know I do know how to say Saskatchewan, just not the way they spelled it. I have a bit of a speech impediment, I've stated this before, and a bit of dyslexia, so when you spell things wrong, I really fuck up. Okay, I also just don't know how to say a lot of words, but I can say Saskatchewan. And I do still think it was funny. I might actually put it in later as editing me, now that I think about it. Anyway, back to recording me. I know it's probably supposed to be Saskatchewan. Like, I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce this spelling, but yeah. There is another, like, direct Phineas and Ferb kind of joke where, what did Isabella say to the zombie? Who you chewin'? If you haven't seen Phineas and Ferb, Isabella often goes over to Phineas's house and says, "What you doing?" So that's what that's a reference to. So yeah, there are direct references, and I do quite like those. But a lot of these are just, why is Frankenstein so funny? He leaves everyone in stitches. Yeah. So it's just like a mixture of kind of Phineas and Ferb direct reference kind of jokes and regular jokes you probably found on the internet. You can hear me flipping the pages. I hope you love that sound effect. It's real. Um, what time is it when your house is haunted? Time to get a new house. Yeah. They're good jokes. They're not bad, really. But I'm not kidding about some of the literally, like, the direct transitions are not great sometimes. Like, how they transition from haunted house jokes to sea monster jokes literally has Phineas saying, "Hey Ferb, what do haunted houses and sea monsters have in common?" What? Absolutely nothing. But it seemed like a good way for me to tell you some sea monster jokes. Literally. Okay. I mean, sure. Sure. Yeah. Some of them are really good transitions, and like, okay, Buford says that it's his turn to tell a story. Once there was a kid who was kind of a bully. In other words, he's the hero of the story. Anyway, whenever this kid saw a spider, he would squash it. That's not very nice, Baljeet said squeamishly. One night, Buford continued, this kid squashed a spider and then heard a strange little noise, almost as if the spider was making a last cry for help. Then the kid heard a strange rustling noise in the bushes. The kid was getting scared, so he ran home. The noise got louder, he said. Even inside the house, he could hear it coming closer. The boy ran into his bedroom and closed the door. Then he heard the noise moving towards his room and scratching on his door. The kid couldn't stand it any longer, Buford yelled, so he opened the door, and standing right there in front of him was a gigantic spider. Oops, I think I left the water running back at home. I had better go check, Baljeet cried. Buford grinned evilly. The kid thinks he's a goner, but suddenly he realizes, hey, wait a second, you're a bully, just like me, let's be a team. And from that day on, said Buford, they lived happily ever after. The end. So it's not really a scary story for the kid in the story itself, but I do find that kind of scary. I hate bullies and I hate spiders. And Baljeet says, that was terrible. Only a bully would like an ending like that. How about if I give you a mega wedgie? Buford challenged. Did I mention how much I love that story? Baljeet said with a whimper. Phineas tried to lighten the mood. Hey, how about some jokes about spiders and other creepy crawlies? Okay, that's a fun transition. But they did just totally gloss over bullying and used it as a way to transition into jokes. So not great. So yeah, I'll give this book like 3 stars, I guess. But yeah, I think Degrassi could do a better job, and that's what I set out to kind of prove by writing my book. I don't fully have a name for it. I guess you could call it Degrassi's Generational Halloween Joke Book, or Halloween Across Degrassi Generations. Something like that. I don't know. Anyway, to start out, we show Fred from Ida Makes a Movie, Ida's brother Fred. He's telling Ida, Cookie, and Noel the same story he was telling them in the episode Irene Moves In. So we see Fred with his rake in hand next to a pile of leaves, and he's saying, and he has big teeth covered with blood and big claws, and they saw him just north of here, you know? He eats children, too. It was just 6 days before Halloween, and Fred didn't want to get stuck taking Ida and her friends trick-or-treating. So he was trying to scare them. It was bad enough that he had to rake while they did fun pumpkin carving. It's so unfair, he thought. So maybe if I can trick them into being scared, maybe Mom will take them instead. So I can stay home alone and watch movies. I heard there's a really great Halloween horror marathon on, and I just have to see it. Noel didn't believe him. He said, there's no such thing as Bigfoot. But Fred was not giving up. There is too. I saw pictures, and a man took a video of him running through the woods. Cookie believed him, of course. She's only 6. So Fred knew she'd be the easiest to convince. If you saw pictures, it must be true, Fred. Noel still didn't believe him. They were probably fakes, he said. But Fred just isn't going to give up. How do you know? Did you see them? I saw them. Noel is 10, so he's just about Fred's age, and willing to stand up to him by saying, you can't believe everything you see. Fred needed something else to get Noel to believe, so he said, Herbie Hampton heard on the radio that Bigfoot was just outside our city. I bet he's looking for food. Noel still said he didn't believe, but it was hard to tell if he was being honest. Fred said smugly, believe what you want, but you'll be sorry. Cookie believed, so she said, if you give him food, he wouldn't have to look for it, and he'd go away. Fred couldn't believe it. Ugh, 6-year-olds, he thought. He said, you can't give him human food when he wants human beings. He thought maybe whispering will add a nice effect, so he added softly, late at night, he'll break into your house and hide under your bed to grab you while you're sleeping. Noel still didn't want to show that he was kind of scared. So he told Fred, quit trying to scare us. Fred could see it was starting to work. So he continued, I am not trying to scare you. I'm trying to warn you. If you don't believe me, it's your tough luck. So Noel thought, maybe if I tell some jokes about Bigfoot and maybe other hairy monsters, Fred will drop it, and Cookie will get over this scary story. So he tried the first one that popped in his head. Hey, Cookie, what does Bigfoot put in his chili? Cookie was so confused. Why was Noel asking this? She didn't like chili, so of course she didn't know, and she said as much. I don't know, Noel. And of course Fred was angry that he'd make such a joke, but he didn't care. So he said, human beings! Fred didn't get it, and it only seemed to make Cookie more scared. But what did that matter when the one he wanted to scare the most, his sister Ida, spent the whole time watching the new girl across the street move in? He had to just hope Cookie would be so scared that she wouldn't shut up about it, and Ida would have to listen to her. The next day, Fred didn't drop it. He didn't give it up. He just dropped bits of threats about Bigfoot every time Ida annoyed him. Like when she wouldn't stop shaking the table with her eraser. He said, I'll send you outside and let Bigfoot eat you. And the next night, when his mom made him watch Ida and the new girl, Irene, he turned the radio on to that station his friend had told him about. His friend said they were talking about Bigfoot all the time. So Fred hoped beyond hope that they'd just bring him up again. At first, they were just talking about Halloween, saying, make sure your Halloween is a safe one. Don't go into strange houses. That had Fred thinking, well, if Bigfoot can't scare her, maybe thoughts of a strange or possibly haunted house can? Fred wasn't sure, so he kept listening. And speaking of strange, reports are still coming in about Bigfoot being seen in the area. Let's face it, Halloween is a perfect chance for the beast to come out and feast. He couldn't believe his luck. It wasn't much, but maybe it would work. He decided to let the two girls sit with those words while he went to bed. The next morning, Irene and Ida were still a bit scared, but they couldn't admit it. They wanted to go trick-or-treating. So Irene tried to joke, just like the one Ida told her that Noel made. Irene thought, yeah, the scariest part is he eats kids. But what if he ate something else? It should still be a little scary, and a pun would be fun. It took a few minutes, but she finally had it. What's Bigfoot's favorite sandwich? Ida didn't know for sure, but she had a guess, so she said, mayonnaise and cheese. Get it? Mayonnaise. Irene thought, that's clever, but it's still got a man in it. He's still eating people. So she said, no, grilled cheese sandwiches. They both cracked a few giggles, but sadly, Fred had won and scared them out of trick-or-treating that year. And sure enough, he bragged to all his friends, and the news spread all over, like a wildfire. But so did those jokes. And this started a tradition, across the generations of Degrassi, if you will. A tradition of scary stories told around Halloween, followed by punny jokes, like the one year Liz Jacobs didn't want to take Martin and the other Schlegel kids trick-or-treating. So she had to scare them at a perfect balance. See, she wanted to avoid being seen trick-or-treating by the boy she had a crush on, but she still thought getting paid to collect free candy was a great way to spend the night. The plan for this? Well, scare them away from Degrassi Elementary. For the night. Only the night. She still had to make sure they went to school. But her crush lives right across the street from the school. And he was passing out candy in his front yard all night. So she concocted a story about the gang. You know, the pirate gang. Not too far from them. and how they got their name. Because a witch casted a spell on them a few years ago when they were all dressed up as pirates and trick or treating near the school. She thought it was the best idea, since sliced bread, and it just had to work. Least she looked like a total dork in her homemade witch costume. Alas, it failed, because that darn Martin, so clever and quick, came up with the perfect joke to soothe his siblings' nerves. Why wouldn't Mr. Mackey let witches into the library? They were overdrafting the spelling books. The joke made no sense to Liz, but as years went on, the joke was repeated by Mr. Simpson, who updated the answer to they kept using spell check. That made Jack feel a little better, since Emma would be the one who turned into a witch anyway. See, the witch in Liz's story turned you into whatever you were dressed up as if you went to Degrassi and said trick or treat on Halloween. Those were the magic words. Jack was 4 and dressed as he had every year since he was born, inspired by a joke his mom once spoke. What was Jack's middle name? Oh, Lantern. Maybe it was silly, but he loved it. Of course, Emma felt a bit bad, not only because the story didn't work, but the whole school was recovering after the day she just couldn't stop thinking about. And so she just wanted to avoid the building for a night. She felt bad for trying to ruin her little brother's fun, but she needed to stay away, if only for a day. Well, her mom wasn't having any of this. While her stepdad understood due to similar experiences, her mom told her another corny joke to prod and poke and stoke the healing process buried deep within. She knew Simpson was going as a vampire because the school's theater department was trying to get rid of those costumes. So she said, why did Raditch want to cancel the Degrassi play? Simpson looked at her with a skeptical look, pleading, hoping she would recognize the wrong audience in front of her. But alas, she continued with, because it sucked. Well, as you can imagine, it didn't go well for her, and Emma got her wish. They chose a different route for their treats. At this point, you may be thinking that all of our older Degrassi siblings just avoided trick or treating with scary stories for all the generations, and all of these stories will be mostly the same. But that's only partly true. We'll flash forward to another vampire, Claire Edwards. In her room on Halloween night, well, the year is 2010. And sadly for Claire, her sister Darcy is still in Africa. So she decided to help with her church's Hell House instead of trick or treating. The theme was vampires, which was a perfect storm for Madame Degrassi to practice her craft. See, last time she posted her fangfic online for the world to read, and everything exploded in her face when Holly J discovered her true identity. So this time, she's sticking to paper and pen sealed within the voice lock of Girl Talk Password Journal. There's a local writing contest soon, and she wants to enter, but she needs something beyond her opening joke line. What did Claire think of Declan the first time she saw him? It was love at first bite. She needed to change the names, build beyond, and dive within. But Hell House started in half an hour, and she needed to shower. So, as she finished the chips on her plate, she realized it would have to wait. See, Halloween jokes helped kids of Degrassi in all situations across the generations. such as Anya, Holly J, and Riley, as they sit in the waiting room for her mom's checkup to finish. Riley made the corniest Halloween joke he could think of, trying to get Anya and Holly J to crack a grin. What award did Anya's mom win at the Degrassi Spooky Awards? Mummy of the Year. He knew it wouldn't work, but, well, maybe it did, as their fear was not realized. The cancer? All clear. Well, maybe the joke didn't make them laugh or grin, but they could head to the dot and not give cancer another thought. Riley gave hope that some other Degrassi kids were thinking of better jokes and enjoying a happy, kind of gay Halloween day. A few years later, Riley's hope came true for a Degrassi kid he never knew. Zig Novak was no longer on his side of the track. Zig had just moved in with the Mountains, and his friend Grace knew he was scared about the horror movie marathon that Maya and her mom had planned as a family video call with her sister Katie. See, he wasn't scared of the movies. He lived through real life horrors. He was scared of 3 Matlin girls and their dad, plus him. What was he to say to make it all okay? He wanted to make them like him, to clear the air and fit in to his new home. Grace thought she had the perfect icebreaker joke for him to use, so she wrote it in a note during French class. How does Madame Genoux start all of her classes? She says, Bonjour. Maya followed this up with, and she ends it with, Bon voyage. Zig couldn't believe that luck had struck, as earlier that day he had been told of another Degrassi Halloween story of old, when our friend Lucy wasn't so lucky. The joke didn't work. I must have skipped over it. Gosh, bear with me. Degrassi has 40 years worth of Halloweens, and they couldn't all flow with my 1 cup of joe on this table next to my laptop as I click and clack on the keys nonstop. Ah, yes, Lucy. I'm sure you remember her. Actually, this fits better here anyway, as we go from one movie night to another. See, Lucy was quite nervous to show LD her movie. It Creeps. You remember. After the showing in her class didn't go so well, she couldn't get it off her mind. The class laughing so hard. And while she put on a smile during the showing, LD was different. LD was in the hospital, and things in their friendship had changed a lot due to LD closing off other friendships, as well as Lucy's feelings for Bronco. LD seemed engrossed in the scene of Caitlin walking, knife in hand, slowly towards Wheels in the shower. But it was impossible to tell what she was thinking. I'll tell you what LD was thinking. She couldn't stop thinking about Lucy. Lucy was creeping her way into LD's heart. She just couldn't find a way to tell her. What could she say? She was gay? As the film came to an end, Lucy looked at her friend. Before she spoke, she decided LD also thought it was a joke. LD didn't know what to say, so she tried to rewind, but the remote batteries had died, and LD's brain was fried from all her emotions, plus the chemo concoctions of medications. When all else had failed, she simply held Lucy's hand, smiled, and said, Best movie ever. LD thought she was clever, but it wasn't enough. Lucy said, Really? The class's reaction was more tough. Lucy began to relay the day, and LD almost cried, but As I said, she was fried. Therefore, her eyes remained dried. She thought hard of what to say, but she needed the cup of courageous coffee that I'm holding now. If she were to ever tell Lucy the truth, that these films Lucy made of how Degrassi High was holding up while LD was locked up in the cancerous hospital, and their friendship meant more than she can say because truly she was gay, then LD reflected on when her mom died in a hospital, and she used to be so scared of them. But she overcame that to visit her dad when he was here not too long ago. Maybe it could be so. She could give it a go. So she went with the version of what was on her heart and said, the class was wrong to laugh. It really creeped its way into my heart. Lucy giggled a bit. Truly, LD always made her feel better. So Lucy squeezed LD's hand, then snuggled her close. Maybe too close? And maybe that's why Lucy thought she was bi. When LD decided, then and there, to run her fingers into Lucy's hair, look her in the eye, and kiss her slow. Lucy didn't know, should she stay or should she go? She had a date with Bronco tomorrow, but if her and LD were gay. But before she could respond, a nurse came to say she couldn't stay. Visiting hours were convenient in reminding her she had to go get ready for Bronco. Life sure moves quickly on Degrassi, but when it gets too spooky, you can learn to slow down by clowning around. Don't forget to sit back, relax, and think before you just do whatever it takes to make it through Halloween. And that's my short story. I hope you loved it, and I hope you enjoy Halloween. I hope you have a great time. If you noticed a lot of rhyming, it's because I had recently been listening to an audiobook called How the Boogeyman Became a Poet, and it's a memoir in verse about a queer black male poet in the 1990s, making it through high school and such. And I guess that really inspired me to flow and rhyme a little bit more. I hope you really enjoyed that, and I hope you come to the same conclusion that I have. Degrassi really could have a Halloween joke book if they would like to. I think that they could do it, and I think more shows should do that. I think Degrassi has a good future with fan written books, and that's it. I don't know which book I'll be discussing in my next episode because, again, two Kids of Degrassi Street books were published on the same day. So I'll be hosting a poll about that in my Instagram story sometime soon. And yeah, y'all can help me vote on which one to do next. So if you want to vote in that poll, you can follow me on Instagram at Lucy0520. Also, please rate and subscribe to this podcast on Spotify. And if you're not listening on YouTube, please go check it out on YouTube. I'm there now as Lucy Library. At the time of the recording, there's only podcast stuff on there, but I hope to post more book stuff soon that's not Degrassi related. And as always, you can find more Degrassi fan art of mine on Redbubble, where I am Sierra Lucy05. The Phineas and Ferb joke book will be on sale soon on my mom and I's eBay at Mimi Attic Vintage on eBay. And we have tons of other books there too. Now, while supplies last, we're giving away free bookmarks with every purchase of a book, so go check us out. The link tree in my Instagram bio has links to all of this. And happy Halloween! Woo!